The expanses of the paradise city of Chicago were replete with dozens of dramatic and tragic love stories. And here is one of them. Our story centers on two people, Melanie and Louis. Melanie was a dynamic woman whose life was large and varied. She was an active member of the management team of a successful company, the owner of an exquisite clothing brand, and a vibrant fashion personality. During the day, she worked diligently and meticulously, managing her many projects, and in the evenings she was busy with endless social obligations, organizing events and charity evenings. But despite all her external achievements, Melanie secretly longed for true love and sincere understanding, which neither diamonds nor public applause could give her. Louis inherited a fortune and a business empire from his family, but preferred to live modestly and away from social gossip. His passivity to external signs of status did not mean a lack of passion. He passionately devoted himself to his affairs, learned new things, and explored the world, becoming one of the most eligible bachelors in Chicago. Louis was known for his calm demeanor, deep knowledge and vision that the true worth of a person is not in what he owns, but in his actions and merits. Melanie and Louis have known each other for a long time. Their paths crossed many years ago at university. There, a spark ran between them, penetrating into the hearts of each, but fate seemed to have other plans. They separated in life, devoting themselves to their careers, not giving these feelings the opportunity to flare up in full force. However, the memory of those days carelessly laid out the bound pages of the diaries of their souls, preserving the secret of those subtle moments of intimacy. Life went on like this for many years, until at some point what was supposed to happen happened. They met again, at a charity dinner one cold winter evening. Melanie and Louis stand on both sides of the hall, she in a sparkling evening dress that catches the eye, he in a shabby leather jacket, trying to remain unnoticed. It seemed that between them, there was an abyss of worlds and ways of life. But after so many years, having recognized each other, something in their views built a bridge through time. All evening, fluctuations between a sense of duty and the desire for a more personal dialogue struggled in their hearts, until finally they were left alone, standing at the window overlooking the lights of the big city. Melanie, Louis began with a dazzling smile. It's nice to see you after so many years. Louis, time has been generous to you, Melanie smiled back, hesitating a little. The conversation continued as if the wind had filled the sails with a long-forgotten, but always strong feeling. The memory of my student years came back to life in details, anecdotes, and laughter. At the end of the evening, when goodbyes were already inevitable, the decision to meet again seemed to be the only logical continuation. Louis, it was really nice talking to you today, Melanie said as they walked out the door together. Melanie, time has only confirmed my memories of you, Louis answered, sincerely looking into her eyes. Perhaps we could meet one of these days, continue the conversation, without the crowds and noise. Her smile lit up her face like sunlight after a long night. I would be happy, Louis. Let's find time for a cup of coffee. The promise of a new meeting was in the air, like the emerging chord of a future symphony. They exchanged phone numbers and exchanged parting glances that reflected their shared hopes and expectations. Already thinking about the upcoming meeting, Melanie felt the classic pounding of her heart that you experience when standing on the threshold of something more than just a meeting. Louis, in turn, leaving there, felt a strange excitement and pleasant anticipation. The meeting was planned. A simple coffee promised to be the beginning of a new chapter in their joint history. In the quiet hours of dawn, when the city was still sleeping under the starry veil of the winter sky, Louis, awakened by the beating of his heart, expecting a meeting, sent Melanie a message. His words were simple, but the hope he brought with him was immeasurable. Melanie, I would like to see you again. We can meet? As soon as the warm rays of the sun began to wake her from sleep, Melanie saw his message, invigorating, like morning coffee. Quickly, as a dream outlines in the margins of one's imagination, she replied, Louis, let's spend the evening together. Come to my place for dinner. The anticipation of the meeting turned into a fascinating dance of time, where every minute, permeated with thoughts about the upcoming dinner, seemed like music from the very depths of the soul. The past day had become an eternal passage, in which every moment between the morning invitation and the evening expectation was filled with an endless sense of anticipation. As the clock struck midnight, Melanie sat in the cozy living room, bathed in the light of soft candles and the twinkling of Christmas lights. She chose a light silk nightdress that emphasized her slender figure, thin and weightless, as if created for secret dates. In her quest to look natural and at the same time charming, Melanie tried not to overdo it, but also not to miss the chance to make Louis's heart beat faster. With each passing hour, her anxiety intensified, and her fingers involuntarily reached for the phone, hoping to catch a message from him. And so, when the clock hands barely crossed the threshold of 23:30, the silence was interrupted by a light knock on the door. Melanie didn't want the door locked. She dreamed that Louis would simply enter his home, but he apparently decided not to violate her personal boundaries. With excitement in her soul, she walked to the door. Until the last moment, inhaling the delicate aroma of floral perfume, Melanie hoped that this smell would transport the moment of her meeting with Louis into eternity. When she opened the door, her heart sank with excitement. Louis stood in front of her, all in black, and a mysterious half-smile was hidden on his face. "Melanie!" he called her affectionately, crossing the threshold. "Come in, Louis." She hospitably led him inside, feeling her heart overflowing with joy. Louis glanced at the exquisite interior. "Melanie, it's so cozy here. How about we bring you something hot?" he suggested, and a whirlwind of happiness unfolded in her stomach. Modestly, but with feminine grace, she led him into the kitchen, and then returned to the living room with mugs of steaming mulled wine. Louis looked at the window, outside of which there was a night thunderstorm. When night fell, they both settled down on the sofa in a half-embrace. Louis lay relaxed, letting time drag on forever. "Melanie, maybe you should take a shower after a day like this," he asked calmly. She touched his cheek. "Louis, I wanted to remain who I am for you," she purred, smiling slightly. "Besides, I managed to do this before you arrived." "Then great, let's enjoy this night as it is," he smiled back, said, and hugged her warmer. They lay down next to each other, filled with dreams, and the expectation that the night would pass not just in silence, but in the magic of tenderness and reverent touches. What began as a quiet meeting of old friends grew into a dance of hearts, where every whisper, every look, and every touch became chapters in their own love story. After a minute of silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of rain on the glass, Melanie decided to take the plunge. She turned to Louis and saw that he was breathing calmly. His eyes were closed, as if he had fallen asleep. "Has he fallen asleep already?" she thought in surprise. It was a mystery to her how he could drift off into the world of dreams so quickly. It was their first night together. How could he feel so relaxed? Melanie wasn't sure if she should wake him. In her heart, she thanked fate for this coincidence of circumstances. Perhaps this is what brought them together again after so many years. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she placed her hand on his chest, and his heart beat calmly and evenly. Melanie wondered if something had happened between them that night. Would she be able to count on him for support in the future? Perhaps even with the birth of a child? Thoughts like these made her heart beat faster. And suddenly, Louis exhaled deeply and opened his eyes. "Melanie, what are you doing?" His voice sounded soft, but surprised. Melanie held her gaze, and her eyes filled with tears. She approached him and quietly whispered, "For 5 long years I was alone, as if in exile. It's not fair, Louis. Maybe even after everything you still need me?" Something stirred in Louis's heart. He hugged her, burying his face in her soft hair, his lips touching her forehead in a light kiss. "Melanie, you have never been a burden to me. All these years I've been blind. I need you so much." Louis looked at Melanie with a certain amount of thoughtfulness, as if an internal representation of feelings was playing out in his heart. "If you think I came here just for that." His words were lost in silence, but his gaze did not leave hers. Melanie looked at him warily through her wet eyelashes, her heart pounding. "Louis, believe me, I seek nothing more than understanding. Do you really think that after all these years I could—" "Melanie, you are a part of my life that will always be with me," Louis interrupted, his voice trembling. "I don't put you on the same level as fleeting pleasures. This world is a cruel place, and we've spent too many years casually touching each other with words, but not with hearts." "Louis," she whispered his name, folding her hands on his chest as if trying to understand through touch whether the feelings in his words were true. Louis took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. "I did not come here at the insistence of third parties. I'm here because I decided to be with you, to make up for lost time, Melanie." His voice was firm and calm. Melanie felt the tension leave her body. With tears that were no longer tears of loneliness, she clung to Louis and whispered, "You know, I never cared about money. These years, I was just trying to find myself and hopefully find us, together." Louis ran his fingers over her cheek, wiping away tears. "Only you and I can build peace, Melanie. Not money, not fame, but the sincerity of what we feel here and now." Louis looked at Melanie in amazement, the depth of his eyes reflecting a world of piercing thoughts. "So you really love me and not my property?" he asked unexpectedly, as if trying to penetrate into the very essence of her heart. Melanie just nodded, her gaze even softer than before. "Louis, my love for you cannot be measured by money." Her voice sounded tired, but there was unshakable sincerity in it. "Then I'll take a risk," Louis sighed, as if reasoning out loud. "Let's leave the material behind and build something of real value. Let's value moments, not coins." Melanie looked at him in bewilderment, not believing her luck. "Louis, why do you need all this? Do you want to test your strength?" "No, Melanie, this is not a test. This is liberation." He took her hands in his, freeing us both from the shadows of the past. "I don't want us to base our lives on assumptions and fears." Melanie looked at him intently, and the light of new confidence reflected in her eyes. "Louis, you have always been a part of my soul. I was with you when we were nothing. If you decide to change everything, I will be by your side. We'll get through this like we always do." Louis bowed his head, briefly touching her forehead with his. "No ultimatums, Melanie. Just a life of understanding and true love." Louis gently but insistently pulled away from Melanie, bewilderment reflected in his eyes. "If you really want to start over, give me the opportunity to rest so that tomorrow we can face a new day with a clean slate," he said softly. That night set the tone for their new relationship, and Louis wanted every move to be thought out, every decision to be made consciously. He lay silently, peering at the windows tightly curtained in the darkness and listening to the sound of the rain. Louis nervously touched his watch, checking the time. It was already 3 a.m. It seemed to him that the hours remaining until morning were an eternity. Melanie slept soundly next to her. Her breathing was measured and calm, as if she had already found peace in anticipation of a new life. It had been a long night for Louis, who rolled over in search of a comfortable position, trying to leave his worries and doubts behind. With each passing hour that brought them closer to dawn, he realized that his desire to be near Melanie was not a simple impulse, but a deliberate choice of the heart. Morning has finally arrived. The first rays of the sun broke through the cracks of the curtains and illuminated the room. Louis, barely opening his eyes, looked at the sleeping Melanie. Her calm face reminded him of the pricelessness of the moment between the past and the future. At that moment, he realized and accepted his new reality, in which he and Melanie would have to build a new story. A story without conditions, based on deep, sincere love. With the first rays of the morning, the room became brighter, and the world came to life with new colors. Melanie slept peacefully, her face frozen in an expression of serenity, and Louis watched her, feeling an indescribable surge of tenderness. His soul was filled with calm, intertwined with quiet excitement from the unexpected depth of feelings. The past is left behind, and only the coming day will be able to show what their intentions were worth. In the silence of the coming morning, Louis felt the accumulated tension gradually disappear, giving way to calm determination. When Melanie finally woke up, she met Louis's gaze, who smiled at her gently and naturally. "Good morning," he said quietly, in his warm, soothing tone. She responded with a smile, momentarily forgetting about the worries that had bothered both of them the day before. "Good morning, Louis. What are you thinking about today?" "Thoughts," he thought, and then confidently continued. "My thoughts are only about us, about how we can rebuild our lives. We have a chance to start over with a clean slate, and I want us to use it wisely." This was exactly the word she had been waiting for. The opportunity to start over, without the fear of losing face in front of the world, without the fear of being left without support. They looked at each other silently, realizing that new horizons were opening up before them. "Then let's do it together," Melanie said, her voice full of determination. Their day began with a simple breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread and aromatic coffee filled the room with comfort. Conversations flowed freely, without past grievances and misconceptions. Melanie and Louis discussed the future, planned and dreamed. And if until now their lives were bleeding from separation and unrequited feelings, now they were healed under the influence of a new day that came with the promise of a new beginning.